Good afternoon and welcome to the SR 520 Portage Bay Bridge and Roanoke Lid Project's June monthly construction meeting. My name is Alan Van and I am the Public Information Manager for the Skanska team. I will be kicking us off today before we dive into some construction updates for you folks. Next slide, please. For today's meeting, I just want to give you an overview of the agenda and some of the topics that we'll be covering. So we will go over the overall project schedule, give you a status update on some pile driving that's happening on land near the Montlake neighborhood, give you an overview of some of the current construction activities that we are working on right now, and then also give you a long-term look ahead, mainly focusing on some upcoming utility work near Boyer Avenue East and East Roanoke Street. At the end, I'll also give an overview of how to stay informed, and then we'll dive into the Q&A section. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll go ahead and pass it over to Robin Clark, Skanska's community liaison, to talk about construction.
All righty. Thanks, Alan, and hello, everybody. Welcome back to our monthly construction meeting. All right, kicking it off with kind of an overview of the project for folks that are new and kind of a recap for folks that have joined us before. What you're looking at here on our screen is just kind of a conceptual drawing of the future project enhancements. We have on the west side of our project, we'll be constructing the new Roanoke Lid, as well as new bike and pedestrian connections that will extend across the current Portage Bay through a regional shared use path. And then we'll be constructing our two new seismically upgraded Portage Bay bridges on the north and south side there that connect 520 to I-5 and across to Lake Washington there. And then we'll have our new bike and pedestrian connections that connect from that crossing of Portage Bay down onto the existing Bill Dawson Trail, where you can then take them up to Montlake Boulevard or some of the other eastern neighborhoods. Kind of an overall look at our project schedule here. We're kind of getting into the middle of 2025. I kind of can't believe how quickly the year is flying by here. We're almost at 4th of July, which is crazy. So I hope everybody's got their 4th of July plans ready to go. I know I'm looking forward to it. We're currently in the middle of our really season or mid-season of our excuse me, I'm going to work that back. We are not in the middle, but we are in the middle of our off-season pile driving activities. We are in the midst of our Portage Bay Bridge North construction, which means we are prepping up for the start of our foundation installation, which includes some of our false work activities that we're getting started with right now. I'll get into a little more of those details here in a minute. Once we get kicked off with those activities, then we'll get into the larger scale construction of the Portage Bay Bridge North, followed by the removal of the existing bridge. Then we'll get following on with the Portage Bay Bridge South construction. And then kind of all in tandem with that, we'll have our Roanoke Lid construction over on the west side of our project. Starting in 2027, we'll get started with our landscaping and urban design across the project. And then, as I kind of flubbed at the start there, talking about our in-water and off-season impact pile driving. We have our in-water first season that ended on April 30th. We do have off-season pile installation that is occurring right now until September 1st, where we'll start again with season 2 impact work in water. I'll talk about that as well here in a moment. All right, so getting into the pile driving updates a little bit more in detail. For our pile driving look ahead June through August, this is what I mentioned as our off-season impact and vibratory pile driving installation. So our crews are kind of continuing to install piles, as you can see in the photo here, in a couple different locations. We're continuing to work on our north work bridge and our south work bridge, where you see the crane there in the photo. We're continuing to use vibratory hammers, both in water and on land throughout this summer. And we'll continue to use that up until that September 1st date that starts our in-water impact pile driving season 2. Once we start that September 1st, we'll again resume impact work in water, where we'll take some of our cranes and barges and get more towards the middle of those work bridges to resume those installations. But I do want to remind folks that we do have some off water or on land impact installation that's been ongoing. You guys may have received one of WSDOT's email listservs that notified you guys of some impact work that started earlier in June. We're hoping to wrap that up here mid next week before the holiday weekend. And you guys can see in the picture there's a bunch of those steel pilings sticking out of the ground. Those are the piles that we're finishing up on the east side that are on land that we're using for our impact hammer to complete. We have a couple more of those to wrap up again before that holiday weekend. And then we're looking to use the vibratory pile installation method for the rest of the summer. So kind of a map overview of what I just talked about. Our green section there is our season 1 in water impact pile driving that we completed previously this year and a little bit last year. Our orange section there is the on-land impact pile driving that we're wrapping up early to middle of next week. And then the purple stripe section there is our vibratory methods that we're going to be using for the rest of the summer up until season 2. Once we get into season 2, we'll go back to a couple of those green sections and continue with more installations. And we'll talk about those more in future monthly meetings. And kind of a recap for folks who are new or for folks who aren't as familiar with the process, the impact versus vibratory pile driving methods, a little bit of a description here on the screen. We have impact pile driving, which is where our hammer hits the top of the pile and it makes a really sharp sound when that impact hammer hits. And we're only allowed to use that in the Portage Bay water area, September 1st through April 30th. But on land, so kind of off the shore line there, we're able to use that method year round. And then for vibratory installation, we are able to use that year round, both in water and on land. But that's where we use a hammer that essentially holds on to the pile and vibrates it into the ground. And we try to use the vibratory method more often, but sometimes the impact method is necessary just due to ground conditions or other obstructions in engineering that we need to utilize to get these things in the ground. So enough about pile driving. We'll move on to a couple current construction activities. So in addition to our on-land impact pile driving that we've been conducting, we also have our Bill Dawson Trail closure, where we've begun some select tree and vegetation removal, as well as some access road construction on the east side of our project there. On the west side of our project, we've also got started on some tree placarding so that we can get into some additional tree and vegetation removals. And then on the very far west side of our project, we are conducting some site preparation for what's eventually going to be a future northbound I-5 to eastbound SR 520 on-ramp. And that's just taking the current on-ramp and essentially shifting it north a little bit in its current configuration. So for our tree removal schedule, to get into a little more detail there, as you can see on the map here, we have our green section on the far east side, on the right side of your screen, where you can see we've currently removed a lot of the trees that we need to remove for our project. So that area is mostly complete. We do have sections in orange that are remaining tree removal areas. So there are some select trees and vegetation in those areas that we're going to have to still remove in order to complete some elements of work on our project. On the west side of the project, we have some upcoming work as well that we're planning for this coming June through August. So primarily in those areas in red, we'll be targeting those for the next areas to start removing. You guys can get most of our updates through our email listserv, as well as these monthly meetings to know when those tree removals will be kind of put on the schedule and radar, as well as any other traffic impacts or major construction impacts. To touch on another one of our major impacts that we have the long-term Build Austin Trail closure that's been ongoing. We did close that on May 12th earlier this year, and it'll be closed for the next 5 years. The closure you can see on the map here is in yellow with the little X marks all along the trail there. We're utilizing this closure to allow us to construct those work bridges that give us access to different elements of the Portage Bay Bridge construction and the current bridge demolition that we have planned in the future. We'll eventually open it in 2030 with the bicycle and pedestrian improvements once we're able to construct those following the bridge construction. On the map here, we've got a couple detours that you guys can utilize. We have our signed pedestrian detour and our signed bicycle detour, as well as the Seattle Neighborhood Greenway that you guys can utilize as some of the biker and pedestrian friendly access points. And on the screen here, we have a couple renderings of the future improvements. On the left-hand side, this is going to be that regional shared use path, very similar to what you guys experienced crossing Lake Washington. It'll be a connection from the bridges up on that higher level down onto the existing Build Austin Trail connection. We'll improve that area down below, and you guys can cross Portage Bay, both east and west. And then you'll be able to connect to Montlake Boulevard as well as the north and south neighborhoods. And then on the right-hand side, you can see a rendering of kind of the underbridge area of what we'll be improving. Here's kind of a drone view of the construction access that we've been working on and our closure with just a bunch of the different elements that we've talked through. We've got on the left-hand side that work trestles that we've been working on, the north and south, as well as some of the Build Austin Trail with some of the tree removals that we've been talking about. To talk a little bit more about that access that I mentioned earlier. So with the Build Austin Trail closure, we're also constructing our access point for our trucks and our materials that will be coming onto the work trestles. So in order to construct the different foundations and superstructure elements of the North Portage Bay Bridge and the South one eventually, we'll have to access that from Montlake Boulevard as well as from some barges. So to do that, we have to construct an access road. As you can see here on this drone view, you can see just a little bit to the diagonal right of the call out sign with Build Austin Trail closed. There's a little bit of pavement that we've installed. Perfect, little pointer there. Yeah, we've installed some pavement. That's where we'll be constructing our access road. It'll come down in line with the Build Austin Trail, and eventually it's going to connect to the north work trestle. That'll allow us to bring some of our materials, our concrete trucks, and really our personal work trucks to get people and crews and material access for the duration of the work trestles being installed in Portage Bay. And here's a kind of ground level view of the Bull Dawson Trail closure looking north from the south point of SR 520. What you're kind of looking at here is just some of the tree removals and some mulch that we're using as a sustainable BMP that allows us to prevent erosion for some of the areas that we clear. And then further in the distance, you can see the crane and some of the areas where we're going to be coming across with the work trestles. So in our planning stages and our construction stages for the Bill Dawson Trail work area and the access to that north work trestle, this is kind of where we're at. The green areas, what we were just looking at with the drone on the previous couple slides, with that blue being the pavement that I mentioned. We'll be continuing to construct down from there, with the red being our perimeter fence. And we'll continue working our way east to west as we connect that work trestle. And then here's kind of the planned view of what that will look like eventually in purple. That'll be that haul route that connects to the work trestle eventually. Once we get that constructed, essentially we'll be putting down rock and then paving over top of it. Then we'll be able to fully access it with our trucks and our material. And that'll, again, allow us to construct the North Portage Bay bridges. Most of this work will be going on for the next couple of months through, I would say, July, August, as we get that paved out. All right, getting into the long-term look ahead for construction activities this year. So one of the major activities that we've talked about in a couple of our meetings now is the Boyer Stairs closure. We're looking at closing the stairs here now in August. And the purpose of that, I'll talk about a little more in detail, is just with some of our utility relocations for some major construction activities on the west side of our project. This Boyer Stairs closure is, again, going to allow us to relocate several utilities in the area, and then it'll eventually allow us to rebuild the stairs in a new configuration. Once we rebuild the stairs, we'll have some new handrails in that area, new lighting, and some new landscaping. And then just to let everyone know, the stairs will be closed for 5 years, a similar duration to the Bill Dawson Trail closure. And folks will need to use alternate routes in the neighborhood and surrounding areas to be able to access around where the stairs are currently connecting. So the upcoming utility work on the Boyer Hillside, where you're looking now in this picture, is kind of the top of the stairs, about the top of the stairs looking down towards Boyer Avenue. Once we start work on the closed stairs, the crews will be relocating an overhead 26 kilovolt power line and an existing underground water line that run kind of alongside those stairs. And they'll be relocating those a little bit to the north of the stairs to get out of the way of our permanent infrastructure for the project. These relocations are, again, necessary for us to be able to install the foundations for the new Portage Bay bridges, as well as some of the walls and other infrastructure for the Roanoke lid. So what you guys can kind of expect out of those utility relocations, our crews will be essentially trenching along the new utility relocation alignments. They'll be using hand tools such as chainsaws and jackhammers, as well as larger equipment such as excavators, dump trucks, and other typical construction vehicles. This will be primarily daytime work during our typical construction hours. For traffic control, you guys can expect typical single lane closures on East Roanoke Street, 11th Avenue East, and Boyer Avenue East, And there will be some intermittent, full road closures on those roads as well. We'll definitely be giving you notification of these in our similar listservs and other notifications on our construction corner. So please keep an eye on those so you guys can get those notifications. And we'll give you guys as much advance notice as we can once we have those scheduled. So getting into a little more detail on what that looks like. For the water line portion of the relocation, in that mid-August timeframe, we'll start replacing a 12-inch water line that's along East Roanoke Street. It essentially kind of connects almost to Boyer Avenue and then all the way up towards 11th Avenue East and East Roanoke Street. Before we replace the current one, we have a couple temporary connections that will be installed, ensuring that there's very minimal service disruptions. There may be a couple utility disruptions, but the folks that are directly impacted in that area will be notified ahead of time. Similarly, we'll have electrical line relocations near that area. These will be a little bit longer in their impact as far as the length of location. So from Boyer Avenue, running up a similar alignment to 11th Avenue East, and then further along East Roanoke Street, we'll have that undergrounding of the 26 kilovolt power line. That will again also begin in mid-August, similar time frame to that water main. And then we'll be undergrounding it, running up the hillside and along East Roanoke Street. We don't expect any immediate outages or disruptions for folks, but again, similar to the water line, we'll let folks know if there are any direct impacts or disruptions that you can expect. And kind of the last thing that I want to talk about and touch on for long-term impacts is the traffic shift for temporary Bridge 1. So we talked about this a little bit with pile driving. One of the reasons we have impact pile driving that we're working on land for this summer is for temporary Bridge 1, which will allow us to enter a series of traffic shifts over the next year or so to shift the different alignments of the current SR 520 configuration and then allow us to construct the new Portage Bay bridges. The first one of those is, of course, this temporary Bridge 1 that you see on the screen. We're currently constructing that area in blue by installing the foundations, which are the piles that are being driven right now. Once that's constructed and we reline traffic onto that, we'll remove the area in red, which is the existing off-ramp from eastbound 520 to Montlake Boulevard. And we'll have a couple weekend closures that folks can expect for us to do that traffic shift. So again, similar to all of our traffic impacts, we'll notify you guys through either listserv and or our construction corner of any of those traffic impacts, full closures, lane closures, etc. All right. So with that, I appreciate everybody listening to my spiel. With that, I'll kick it back over to Alan.
Great. Thank you so much, Robin, for walking us through the construction updates and what's ahead. I just want to give a quick overview of how to stay in touch, and then we'll go ahead and dive into the Q&A. I do see that we have 2 questions in the Q&A right now. As I'm going through the last couple of slides, feel free to continue submitting your questions. But if we dry up the queue, then we'll go ahead and end a couple minutes early. But with that, let's go to the next slide. Just as a reminder for how to stay informed, we have our Portage Bay construction hotline, our 24-hour hotline at 206-319-4520. We also have our Construction Corner website where we will post any sort of traffic updates for you folks, and then also our meeting materials for today's meeting. That should be up within the next week or so. The URL is right there on your screen. And then we also have a QR code to scan to sign up for email updates. I highly encourage that you sign up for the rest of the West email updates. We send regular updates, I would say about on a weekly basis, to give updates on construction and just generally what's happening in the neighborhood. And then also, we will share information about any of our upcoming meetings, whether those are the monthly construction update meetings like today, or any future in-person or online open houses. And then lastly, we have our project email address, sr520bridge@washdot.wa.gov. That email address goes to the entire project team, so we'll be able to route that to the appropriate subject matter expert. So feel free to send any and all questions to that email address. With that, I believe we can just go ahead and dive into the Q&A. If we could go to the next slide, just to remind folks how to submit their questions. Oh, sorry, I was one slide ahead. One thing that I do want to note for you folks, we are uh, asking for your feedback on this meeting slide, or sorry, this meeting time. If you scan the QR code or visit the URL at the bottom of the screen, there is a short survey where we're asking folks to submit their feedback on whether or not this meeting time works. We know that as people are planning summer vacations or planning around school being out of session, this meeting time may not necessarily work for future construction update meetings. So feel free to scan that QR code, visit the URL, and let us know if there is an alternative time that works for you. With that, I'll go ahead and look through some of the questions. We have 4 questions in the Q&A that we can start addressing now. So the first question that we have is from Pete regarding the Boyer Stairs closure. So the closest transit for the Boyer, Montlake, and Portage Bay neighborhoods is on 10th Avenue East near Roanoke Park, where the stairs were needed to reach the transit stop. What are the alternative routes you mentioned? I'll kick us off and then I'll pass it over to Robin if there's anything that she wants to expand upon. But we know that with the Boyer Stairs being closed, that is a key corridor for folks to travel from Boyer Ave up to the Roanoke Park neighborhood, and it is a challenging area to be traveling through if you're not traveling by car. We won't have an official detour signed. We do recommend that folks, if they're capable or if they're able to, take the East Edgar Street up to 11th Avenue East, or travel up to 14th Avenue East, which is a little less steep if you have any sort of mobility concerns. But again, we won't have an official detour. We did work with SDOT earlier this year to install that signalized crossing at the Boyer Ave East Roanoke intersection. That should make it easier for folks to cross east-west on Boyer Avenue East. But if any folks have any sort of feedback to share with us or any recommendations on detours, feel free to just send us an email. Robin, is there anything that you'd like to add on top of that?
No, I think you touched on everything that I would have said. Thank you, Alan.
All right, thanks, Robin. Our next question is from Carl regarding some of the tree and vegetation removal. So it looks like some of the landscaping between the sidewalk and fence along Boyer Avenue East, southeast of the 520 right-of-way, may be retained. Is this correct? I'm not super familiar with the Furland property off the top of my head, but Robin, I'll give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, Carl, great question. I believe I've talked to a few folks in this neighborhood area about that specific property and some of the vegetation, especially between the fence line and that sidewalk right there. We are looking into that to see, I believe some of that is going to be retained, especially between, again, the outside of the fence and the sidewalk. But what we did is we're working with a couple folks to make sure we notify of when we're going to be working in that area. So we can identify what is going to be removed and what is going to be retained. So what I will do is, Carl, I'll keep you in the loop on those conversations as we get closer to that construction time frame, so you can be informed on that, those impacts.
Great. Thank you, Robin. And then we just have a quick comment from Deborah regarding notifications about outages and road closures. So the best way to stay informed about road closures would be our construction corner, sr520construction.com. If we do anticipate closing or restricting any access to specific properties or alleyways, we will be notifying nearby neighbors in advance. Most likely through a flyer, you may receive an email as well, in addition to the flyer. For outages, we'll be working closely with our utility partners to make sure that you receive a notification in advance of any outages. Yeah, we have several different resources, both online and printed materials that we'll distribute to notify you folks. The next question we have is from Glenda. Was a plan or design ever made to enter eastbound 520 from the street, somehow merge the eastbound with a street level merge at the same location? Glenda, I may need you to clarify which street you are referencing, whether that is a local city street, like Boyer Ave, for example, or if you're talking about a different city street. So we may need you to follow up with an email to us for clarification.
Yeah, and I can touch a little bit on this, Alan, too. I would say there were a lot of conceptual designs and thought processes that went into the planning of this project well before it was executed into what you see here on the screen and what you've seen today. A lot of our Washout colleagues and partners also met with stakeholders, community members, Seattle design commissioners several years before this project to kind of come up with the best path forward, taking a lot into consideration. And while I don't know the specifics on where the connections were decided upon and why, the why behind it, I believe, oh, I see the clarification here, Boyer Ave north of 520 at University Bridge. Yeah, it's a great question. We can look into it if you'd like some details behind the why. But my understanding is that they had to assess a lot of the traffic levels, a lot of the different stakeholder involvements in that planning process. So I'm I have no doubt that some of these different configurations were considered, but ultimately this was the design that was put forth for us to construct and fully flesh out for the project here.
Great. Thank you, Robin. And thank you, Glenda, for providing the clarification in the chat. We have one additional question from Julia regarding tree removal. Why are you removing trees on the small triangle across from Queen City Yacht Club between Roanoke and Boyer? The trees are not in the way from what she can see and takes years to grow.
Yeah, Julia, that's a great question. There's a couple reasons here. One is for some of the utility relocations. Part of that 26 kilovolt power line and the water line that I mentioned will be impacting that area, including a couple vaults that we'll be installing in that area. Those will impact some of those trees. In addition to that, part of the challenge with some of these areas is that we have to bring in some large equipment to eventually construct the Portage Bay bridges, which will involve some sizable cranes. So in order to do that without significant impacts to the Boyer Avenue Road adjacent, we will have to take out some of that area to provide enough logistics room and construction room to place that large equipment and then construct the new bridge alignment. So part of it is for construction access, and then part of it is for that utility relocation.
Great. Thank you, Robin. It looks like that is the last question in the Q&A. I'm going to give it just a couple more moments for folks in case they are actively typing any questions in the Q&A chat. So we'll sit tight for the next couple of moments. And then as a reminder, in case anybody is submitting their questions in the Q&A, just a reminder for how to stay informed. One method that I didn't mention earlier, we do have social media accounts as well, where there are regular reminders about our monthly construction meetings, and then also our in-person and online open houses. So feel free to follow the WashDOT social media accounts, in addition to signing up for the rest of the West email updates. It doesn't look like we have any additional questions. So with that, I think we can go ahead and wrap up early. As a reminder, we will be posting a recording of today's meeting on the Construction Corner, in addition to our presentation materials. If you have any questions about the project or anything that we may have discussed today, feel free to give our hotline a call at 206-319-4520, or send us an email. Oh yeah, and then on the slide here, you'll be able to see exactly where the meeting recording will be posted within the next week or so. With that, thank you everybody for your time this week, or this month rather, and we will be in touch for our next construction meeting. Please fill out that survey about the meeting times, and then we will be in touch. Thank you everybody. Take care.
Thank you.